Welcome, and thank you for joining the Holocaust Center for Humanities Lunch and Learn program. I'm Alana Cohn-Kennedy, the Holocaust Center's Chief Operating Officer. Happy Hanukkah to those of you who are celebrating the holiday. Have you seen those giant pink billboards? You would know it if you have, and you would probably be asking yourself, does it really say what I think it says? And whether you cheer or cringe when you see them, today you are going to hear from the person behind those billboards. We have people joining us from all over today. Please take a moment and let us know where you are tuning in from in the chat. And I already see Sarah from Chicago. Thank you so much for being with us today. This past week, in fact, these past couple of months, we have seen shocking and shameful rhetoric, actions, and lack thereof from leadership at the most prestigious and elite colleges as anti-Semitism explodes on campuses. Protests against the actions of the Israeli government bleed into accusations, assumptions, and even violence towards all Jews. I have been blindsided by the speed at which individuals and groups are quick to blame all Jewish people and their eagerness to cite stereotypes and to express their dislike or distrust for Jewish people. With this comes Holocaust denial and an upsetting sort of victim Olympics, with the Holocaust being used as both a weapon and justification. We've received countless calls and emails at the Holocaust Center from parents, students, administrators, and individuals in general who have witnessed or experienced anti-Semitism. On our homepage on our website, you will now find a large blue button that reads, Report and Respond to Anti-Semitism. When you click on this, it gives you three options. The first is to report an incident to the Anti-Defamation League, which is tracking incidents across the country and which has the tools and resources to help legally if needed. The second provides opportunities for education, including programming for schools and community groups. And the third specifically addresses steps for responding to anti-Semitism in your school. Even before the Hamas attack on Israel, we were already seeing record numbers of anti-Semitic incidents around the country. JewBelong's bold and sometimes controversial campaign calling out anti-Semitism, which began years ago, has ramped up its efforts under the leadership of its founder, Archie Gottesman. When one of JewBelong's iconic bright pink billboards went up in Seattle earlier this year, I received a flurry of emails from people wondering what the heck this was all about. JewBelong's messaging brought a mix of reactions, from anger to laughter. And so I was more than curious to see if I could get in touch with founder Archie Gottesman and have a conversation. For more than 20 years, Archie and JewBelong co-founder Stacy Stewart were the voice behind Manhattan Mini Storage, turning it into one of New York City's most iconic brands. In addition to branding, Archie's business experience includes HR, business operations, and real estate. She has sat on the board of numerous organizations, including the Foundation for Jewish Camp, Israel Campus Coalition, and Animal Haven Shelter, among many others. She is a graduate of Northwestern University and the Wexner Heritage Foundation. We are going to start with a short video to introduce the organization JewBelong, and Archie will be joining us right after the video. We will have time to take questions from the audience at the end of the program, and please type your questions in at any time into the Q&A. With that, I will turn it over to the video now that we will watch.
I don't need people to like it. I need people to read it. I need people to stop hating Jews.
Concerns about a sharp increase in anti-Semitism has prompted one particular group to push back. Standing high above three of San Antonio's busiest intersections are these
billboards are now popping up across Metro Detroit
and across the country, raising eyebrows.
In Tampa, speaking out against anti-Semitism.
Here in Boston and other U.S. cities have created a whole new conversation.
Joining us today is the organization's founder, Archie Gottesman.
We live in a world where message matters. If we had just said, stop anti-Semitism, like, you might not notice it.
If you've been around LA, you've seen the big billboards on trucks.
Can a billboard end anti-Semitism? No, but you are not a billboard.
The color and wording are in your face, meant to grab the attention of bored drivers stuck in traffic.
San Antonio is one of at least 6 cities in this campaign.
The message is also being spread in Spanish.
I want people to be like, what did that just say?
Archie Gottesman is the architect of the campaign and has a specific goal for people who see the billboards.
And to speak out and to be an ally to the Jewish community, because we need it. We're good allies for other groups, and it is a time for others to be an ally to the Jewish people.
We just got to stick together. No matter what race you are, we're human. That's it. We're human.
I think the idea is great for New York, especially in such a diverse area.
We have to live together. So no more discrimination.
Reaction to a new billboard campaign in Times Square to fight anti-Semitism. Powerful messages.
It reads, it's just 75 years since the gas chamber, so no, a billboard calling out Jew hate is not an overreaction. Anti-Semitism is growing in America at ridiculously high rates. Anti-Semitism, as an example, has increased 64% in Nevada from 2020 to 2021. Anti-Semitism is rising in the United States. It's rising in Tampa, Florida.
According to the Anti-Defamation League, reports of anti-Semitic harassment, vandalism, and assault are up 34% from 2020.
An all-time high since they started tracking this information in the 1970s.
The FBI director says 63% of all religiously motivated violence in the country is driven by anti-Semitism.
I don't think Jews have felt this kind of sort of bold anti-Semitism in a very long time. Silence does not help a cause. Like, silence is dangerous when it comes to hate. It's clear that didn't happen in the 1930s in Europe for Jewish people. It's not going to happen now. It has been deadly, and it'll be deadly again unless people stand up for justice.
To learn more about this campaign, visit JewBelong.com.
Hi, I am so happy to be here today and to tell you more about JewBelong and to answer some of your questions. And I'm going to just get started. I'm going to share my screen and start out with some pictures. Okay, so JewBelong. JewBelong really started when, okay. Hold on one second. There we go. When I married my husband, Gary, and I know that some of my relatives are watching today, which is super exciting because they knew us back before we were married. So Gary converted to Judaism. He grew up United Methodist. And when I met Gary, I basically said, listen, I'm going to marry somebody who is Jewish and I'm going to have Jewish children. And he said, great, that's not a problem. And his family was fantastic. And it would have been a sort of, that kind of could have been the end of the story, except what started happening is I got to see Judaism through Gary's eyes, through the eyes of a rookie. And what I saw was kind of intimidating and a little bit standoffish and a little bit just a little difficult. And I always think like, oh, and I thought to myself, and by the way, this was back in 1993. This was a long time ago. But I thought to myself, well, jeepers, Jews are always, complaining about our numbers and, there's assimilation and, the Holocaust and our numbers are dripping, dripping, dripping. And I was like, but here I've got this like amazing man and he's Jewish. And I wanted there to be this like, this welcoming, this real like, oh, we're so glad that you sort of joined our people. And by seeing Gary's sort of the experience through his eyes, I was like, I'm not that surprised that not everyone sort of looks at being Jewish as a gift. I really do. I always have. I don't know why. It's just like, I really feel like being Jewish is just, I'm lucky to be Jewish. It's in my core. I'm not that observant, but it is an anchor in the way that I think and I lead my life. Yet, as you see on the screen, we are missing about 50% of America's Jewish community. And that could be for a lot of reasons. But some of them are the sheer, like, I don't know, it just doesn't interest me. I'm not that Jewish. Like, I have these conversations all the time. And everything from like some Hebrew school teacher that they didn't like in 7th grade to someone that they fell in love with who may not be Jewish, to lots of reasons people sort of dribble out of being Jewish. And now, of course, add anti-Semitism, there's a whole nother reason. But I felt that this is a really big problem. And as Alana said in my introduction, I used to be in business and was mostly a branding person. That was like what I loved. So I basically made this sheet, which is an overly simplified version of Jews in America, and started JewBelong. And what I wanted to connect, and JewBelong really does connect with the DJs, the disconnected Jews. So here's our pie. And JewBelong is interested in making the pie bigger, okay? So when you look at the pie, there's the people who are connected. Probably a lot of you on Zoom today, might be connected with the Jewish community. You're on a Jewish Zoom. Like, do you really need JewBelong? I love that you're here, and a lot of people who are connected use our resources, but are real and observant are people who like do Jewish every day. But the disconnected Jews, those who really don't do much Jewish with their life at all, or just identify being Jewish, but like only if you sort of push them, that's who JewBelong is looking for. These people are out there, they can add so much to the Jewish world, and yet they've disconnected. So you can say, okay, great, so that's a terrific idea. I want to find the disconnected Jews too. How do you do it? Well, it's really, really hard because they've disconnected. So they're not on synagogue mailing lists. They're not involved with Federation. They are, they might be involved with the JCC, but only because they're dropping off their daughter for gymnastics, but it's not because of the Judaism. So when you're looking for disconnected Jews, they're just living their lives. So what JewBelong decided to do is reach out to them with mass media. And we do it in sort of a funny, compelling, sometimes what did they say way. So here's a few. But what happens is that people see the billboards and then they go onto our website and they say things like, I haven't gone on a Jewish website in the last 18 years, but I saw your billboard and I think you actually might get me. And then they come on, and JewBelong has resources. But I'm going to show you a few of our billboards. So we don't care which half of you is Jewish. So you eat bacon, God has other things to worry about. That's a big thing at JewBelong. We talk about people being Jew-barest. Like there's like, oh my God, I eat bacon, I'm such a bad Jew. And I'm like, really? Because half the Jews I know eat bacon. Like, that doesn't make you a bad Jew. That makes you an unkosher Jew, but that doesn't make you bad. And I really think that the issue of being a bad Jew is something that is terribly, terribly damaging. And people, oh gosh, I mean, it really makes people run away sometimes. So I'm trying to rid the world of that. This one got a lot of raised eyebrows, even if you think Kugel is an exercise for your vagina. And then we have booklets on them. And again, the goal is to get people to look, okay? Does everybody love this? No, of course everybody doesn't love it, but it starts conversations. It gets people to say, wait, that's a Jewish billboard? Let me go see what that is. And then on our, and then they use our resources. Let's see. And this is a picture of two of our booklets. And I keep mentioning our resources because they are fantastic. And in, like, for example, for the high holidays where there's this picture, people might say, oh, I don't belong to a synagogue. I don't live anywhere near a synagogue. I'm new to a community. I don't know. And I guess I'm going to say it like this. I believe in synagogue. I've always belonged to a shul. I belong to two now, but there are a lot of Jews in America who don't. And rather than, I can't control their lives, but what I can do, what JewBelong can do, is we can give them a way to participate in Judaism that just might work for them, no matter where they are on their Jewish journey. And that's very important to remember. So people might say, okay, you know what? I used your high holiday booklet because I wanted to have a nice lunch for Rosh Hashanah, and we used it. So in the booklet, you can all, I hope you all go onto the website and take a look at it. It's free, and it's beautiful, beautiful readings and blessings and writings about the high holidays. And we have one for Shabbat, as you see, and Passover and Hanukkah. There's still a few days left. We have great readings for Hanukkah, really funny skits. And so it allows people to use basically the resources. And JewBelong Jews, they might just only do something Jewish 3 times a year. Maybe it's just those 3 holidays. Maybe it's only 2. But if they're going to do it, I want people to be inspired. I want the Judaism to feel great and feel like, I know why I did this, because it made my heart full. Okay, so that's what JewBelong is doing. And we have about 400,000 people who use our website and download our booklets annually. So let's call that the joyous Judaism part. Okay, now I'm going to go into the negative part and what we are up against. So JewBelong was, it's an all online. We don't have a building. We don't have meetings and things like that. I mean, where people come. And but being online, we have a very large, our biggest population is on Facebook and Instagram. We have a pretty big community on both of those. And what we started seeing in around May of 2021, because that was the last Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the anti-Semitism that was just blowing up, both on Instagram and Facebook, but Instagram more because Instagram shoots younger to a younger audience, was disgusting. So for those of you on social media all the time, you're going to have seen all of these. For those of you who aren't, I really urge you, if you ever thought about going on Instagram and didn't feel like it, I urge you to go on, not because it's pleasant, but because your kids or your grandchildren are on there. And I really believe it is important to see what they are seeing and where the problem is. Like if there's a battleground, we got to go see what's going on in the battleground. And it is happening on our telephones. So here's a couple of examples. There's on the left, it's Gigi Haddad, who's got, I don't even remember, 60 something million followers telling people that Israel is harvesting organs. About Gaza in the middle. The other one that I'm showing you here is basically saying that you're allowed to criticize Israel and it's not anti-Semitic. Whereas now, I would really, really argue that 99% of Israel criticism is anti-Semitic, because I'm talking about a certain type. I mean, we can criticize Israel, but not in a different way that we criticize other countries. Okay, like, let me see. I just want to be clear on this because sometimes people get a little confused. For example, I might have issues with Bibi Netanyahu. You might have issues with some other government, but I don't deny Israel's right to exist. That's what's happening. That's what anti-Zionists are. The people who criticize Israel, they're saying the whole country shouldn't exist. And that is not legitimate criticism of Israel. That is wanting the end of the country. There's a few more I'm going to show you. By any means necessary, the slide in the middle, because that is what they're saying. People say we are going to allow Palestinians to be free by any means necessary, which means the end of Israel. The irony on the left of becoming what you hated, basically saying Jews are becoming Nazis. And another saying that, they treated the hostages really well in Gaza. I mean, it's insane. Okay, so I know you saw the sizzle reel, so I'm going, with all the news, so I'm going to go through this really pretty quickly, but there's a few billboards that you're going to see here that you didn't see in the reel, and they're important because they've been since October 7th, and fighting back. Okay, so I already told you that I love billboards and that they are such an important way of communicating with people that is not in a that may not be on the same Instagram feed that you are. So we said, okay, fine. So JewBelong said, how can we keep talking about, my great Passover Haggadah if you're scared to wear a Jewish star because someone's gonna, call you a Palestinian murderer? So we decided to start putting up billboards, and this is what you saw. And some of them, again, were 75 years since the gas chamber. So a billboard calling out Jew hate isn't an overreaction. JewBelong does a lot of data testing. This was one of our best, or sort of most successfully tested messages. Does your church need armed guards? Because our synagogue does. I love showing this one because JewBelong does a lot of collaboration with different organizations around the country. This is a great example. Dallas just reached out and they said, can you guys bring your billboard to Dallas? And we're a nonprofit. We raise money. So we said to Dallas, we said, we'd love to come to Dallas. Oh, they had some anti-Semitism going on there, like who doesn't at this point? But, and we said, we'd love to come to Dallas. So they raised some funding and we brought JewBelong out to Dallas. And then we're really good at getting on the news and things like that, as you saw. Hate isn't dangerous. Try wearing a yarmulke. In Spanish, we mentioned that. It's really, really important that we speak to all different communities, and the Spanish-speaking community is huge. This was actually donated by a friend of mine who had someone that she knew who died, who was not Jewish, but he was a Cuban American, and he was a big warrior for the Jewish people, always had been. So in his memory, she donated a couple of billboards in Miami. Being woke and anti-Semitic is like being a vegan who eats meat. This was in Northern California for a long time. This was another nice story. A guy not Jewish reached out to us and he said, I do advertising on a boat. Can you send me your artwork? And we did. And this was in Miami, or I don't know if Miami, it was in Florida. Here's one you didn't see before on the sizzle reel. There were 6 million people who didn't think a few hateful comments would lead anywhere. That speaks for itself. It's just so scary right now out in the world. Cultural Jews died in the gas chamber to speak up. You don't need to be a Jew to protect Jews. This is also this billboard tests very well, or this on digital tests well. And this one is our most important right now. This is the billboard that we are trying to put all over the country. And the reason is that because of the testing, we found, this is going to break your heart because you're good people. But after doing a lot of the testing, we found that the pictures of the hostages were not really resonating as much with the non-Jewish audience. I mean, this is a broad brush. I mean, this is really, hundreds and thousands of people it's testing with. But we, putting up hostages, there became this comments like, well, why is an Israeli baby who's kidnapped more important than a Palestinian who was, killed in the, in the war? And so it almost, you must have seen this on the news. It started ripping down the pictures of the hostages and stuff. So that wasn't resonating as well with a large part of our audience. But what Americans do care about is they care about themselves. And they care that Hamas is not just after Israel and the Jews. Hamas is participating in a holy war. Hamas doesn't like the Western way of life, period. So there will, I think we all read and know that there could easily be Hamas terrorist attacks in America. And that is a problem. And that is something Americans care about. So that is why right now we're an emergency campaign trying to raise the funds to get this billboard in all 50 states. We've already been in 27, which is pretty exciting. And but this is it's so deadly serious that we have to get Americans to realize exactly what this billboard says. Okay, I'm just going to, the reason that billboards work is they reach the broadest possible audience. There's a little trick in marketing that you really have to tell someone 3 times before it kind of gets in their brain. So what happens is when we have a billboard up, we also go very heavy on digital, so people see us on their social media, and then they'll be like, and we say, well, where'd you see it? Where'd you see the advertising? They'll be like, I don't know, you guys are everywhere, which is what we're looking for. The views are not based on a social media algorithm, meaning if I took your phone, I know your feed is very different from mine because we're all sort of in our own little news silos. If I watch MSNBC and you watch CNN and someone else watches Fox News, we all see we're getting different news, and we are also getting, we might read different newspapers, and it's fascinating. We literally live in our own silos of information, but yet outdoor advertising, another word for billboards, are one of the few ways that everyone gets, in the car and drives and sees billboards or walks down the street. So that's why billboards are important, because they're sort of breaking that, that little narrow way that we see things. object permanence. It's a billboard. You don't lose it on your, on your phone. You just saw it. You can't even find it anymore, the ad. And they go viral. Lots of times what happens is people take pictures and they post them, and then they sort of take on a life of its own, and they lead to, and simplicity of messaging. Never overestimate what the American public is interested in. They want simple. That is why From the River to the Sea and Free Palestine and some of the, horrible, we're committing genocide, like fast messaging really is important in America. And it happened with Black Lives Matter. I mean, they did an amazing job of quick messaging. They had the whole country talking an important discussion about race. And that is what JewBelong is trying to do, is like, I want people talking about anti-Semitism, just like they talked about Black Lives Matter, just like we talk about gay marriage or transgender rights or anything like that, but we've got to get people aware of the issue. We also have a truck, because a lot of times people want us to go to college campuses, and you can't buy billboards on college campuses usually. They're not available. And news, obviously, JewBelong wants to get on mainstream news. We don't mind Jewish news. Jewish news is great, but that's not our target audience. We want to be talking to the entire country. So going on the news is important. And this is a little bit about please, if you don't follow us on Instagram or Facebook, please do. We have about 4.5 million engagements. That's people who actually engage with our ads, not just read them. And so that's pretty exciting there. We have a lot more sort of targeted messaging on our social media. And we have, as I said, 400,000 people on our website, the 431,000 who use JewBelong, but a very high reach of engagement. Sorry, the 4 million engagements is really what is great about, or means that people, they not only see our ads, they engage with them. They like them, they share them, they comment, and that's a big deal. And I wanted to share this. This is sort of because it's getting to be the end of the year, and I am obsessed with the fact that Jews give more than 80% of Jewish money goes to non-Jewish organizations. And that is like, well, I just think it's, I mean, I guess do whatever you want to do with your money, the way you give it away. I can have my opinions, but it's your money. But this is what I say. I am really hoping that when people give money away this year to non-Jewish institutions, like a university or like, I don't care, Planned Parenthood, the Red Cross, well, don't give to the Red Cross. They're not being nice in Israel, but whatever they want to give to. It is time that the Jewish people started to say things, and I wrote it out, and I swear I can share it with Alana if you want to share it, but it's basically words and music to the effect of this, that I'm going to do what I've done. I have long been a supporter of, let's just say I was saying Planned Parenthood, and remain committed to your mission. That said, as a Jewish person living in the United States at a time of vicious, growing anti-Semitism, it is critical my support is returned in the form of allyship. The Jewish community is terrified in a great big part because there are very few non-Jewish organizations taking a stand against anti-Semitism and speaking out for our safety. Did you know more than 80% of the money that Jewish people give away goes to non-Jewish causes like yours? And many of those organizations, also like yours, have been silent since October 7th. Please know that your allyship is critical to helping to change the narrative against anti-Semitism. Please speak out and do your part to support the Jewish community the same way many of us have done for you. It's just, I want a two-way street, what I want. And this is one more. This is basically saying, I am not supporting you anymore because I have not been, because you haven't supported the Jewish community. And allyship is a two-way street. And so this I actually used, I stopped giving to where I went to school and where my kids went to school, to college because of that. So that is basically, I just want you guys to remember this. This is my favorite. This is going to be a billboard soon. And I need to be able to tell my children that I did not stay silent. And I really thank you guys for listening and for speaking out and for not being silent. I'm going to stop sharing. yeah, I'm happy to answer questions and talk.
Great. Thank you so much, Archie. I have a number of questions for you, and if it's okay, I'm just going to jump right in.
Sure.
I want to start with one of the billboards that we had up in Seattle, and some people watching today might have seen it. It was along Rainier Avenue, which is a major thoroughfare in Seattle. And it said, "Come for your girlfriend, stay for the lack of hell." And when that billboard went up, I received so many emails from people around the city just wondering, who is this? Do you know anything about this billboard? What's going on here? And there were many who really did not like this billboard and wanted it removed. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the controversy, and if you have heard these kinds of complaints in other cities from the Jewish community, and maybe why sometimes these billboards are also polarizing for Jews.
So I'd say that part of as I said in my remarks, is we are not everybody's cup of tea. And there are so many people who reached out and said, "Oh my God, like that is so funny. My boyfriend's not Jewish." And he's like, there's a certain group of people who think that is just really funny. But what's more than being funny, that's fine. But they go on the website and they do something Jewish. Okay, so our goal is to have people do something to kind of come back into the community. Okay, and when they say, "I haven't done anything Jewish, but I went on JewBelong and I'm actually going to do a Passover Seder for the first time in years, or since my mom used to invite me," like that's a win. And I do think that I think there needs to be space in the Jewish community for real understanding that people are on, not only are they different Jewish journeys, but they think that different things are funny or compelling. And one other thing is, even the fact that people are talking about it, we're not out to create, the goal isn't create controversy. The goal is to have people to reach the DJs, the disconnected Jews. And we're doing that. 400,000, more than 400,000 people using the resources annually. That's a pretty big number for the Jewish audiences. I want it to be more like 3 million, but we're getting there. So I'd say that that's probably the only other thing I have to add to that is there's one that I believe we're talking about, "Come for your girlfriend, stay for the lack of hell." There was also one that said, "Come for your boyfriend, stay for the lack of hell." So it wasn't at all about men or women. It just, we had different ones in different places, and that just happened to be there. So that's kind of yeah, it's and the fact that people are talking about it, it does get, there's a certain amount of that.
And have you heard any complaints from people in the non-Jewish community about the billboards? No.
74% of Jews marry people who are not Jewish. So complaints? No, we get anti-Semitism all the time. So we are getting, JewBelong gets a lot of anti-Semitism, not about that billboard. No, we get the hate from the billboards that are talking about anti-Semitism. So as an example, the Hamas billboard that we saw, let's be clear, Hamas is your problem too. We had 6 that were vandalized in Northern California in the last 4 days. It's really a huge problem. And if you we had another billboard, the one that said, also in Northern California, one that said, "Can a billboard end anti-Semitism? No, but you're not a billboard." And someone painted huge letters over it that said Palestine. And so, which is, we filed, it's a hate crime. Like, that's happened a lot of times. I don't know who's doing the vandalism. They haven't caught somebody yet. I'm assuming they're not Jewish. I don't know, but that's kind of the hate is much more because we're standing up against anti-Semitism way more than what I call sort of the funnier stuff. But we get a lot. The vandalism is really pretty upsetting, just because just because it's going to be expensive to replace them. It's a huge hassle. Like, it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've heard from a couple of people as well from Jewish people who feel that these billboards might actually promote anti-Semitism. Have you heard such comments or criticism before, that given the climate and the growing anti-Semitism, that these billboards kind of poking fun at Jews maybe is only exacerbating anti-Semitism?
No, the anti-Semitism, the complaints really are, the responses that we get are really a lot more from, there's two different audiences if you look at it this way. There's the Jewish, looking for disengaged Jews, and those hardly ever get complaints just because they're lighter, they're funnier. If someone doesn't like the word, the hell that you were talking about, or the vagina one, that one, people are like, oh, that word vagina, that's kind of, it's not that common. There's a little bit of people feedback on that. By far, the more feedback that we receive is from the billboards that are fighting anti-Semitism. And they're from one side or the other. Those are usually people, a lot of times people who are not Jewish, and they say, I'm not Jewish, I don't know why people hate you guys, but I love to see your billboard. I'm so glad that you're here. I hear people talking bad stuff about Jews, and thank goodness you put up that billboard. We get that kind of stuff. We'll also get from Jewish people who say, I was feeling really crappy, and then I saw your billboard, and I'm so glad that you're here. A lot of really positive from both Jewish and non-Jewish. And then on the other side, the really bad, like JewBelong in an oven, and you guys are worse than Hitler, and you're killing Palestinian babies, and all you want, really horrible hate goes on the, so it's, and that's kind of it. And what the billboards are looking to do, so that's where the comments are coming from, but the billboards are we are looking to raise awareness, because there's millions of people in the United States who are barely aware of, it's all we think about, but they're barely aware of the war. They don't really know much about anti-Semitism, if at all. And they are the mushy middle. That is who we are trying to talk to. And if, there's things that happen on the edges, that's part of saying almost anything these days. No matter what people say, there's people coming down, no matter what it is, we live in a world that is incredibly polarized these days, and people they can't wait to jump and, say stuff. So that is just part of the hate is definitely part of being a Jewish organization. At least, I don't know if that's what you found, but that's what we have found, that you wish people Shabbat Shalom, and they tell you you're killing people. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm. So Archie, when I initially scheduled this program many months ago, it was, to discuss your already very strong campaign on fighting anti-Semitism. However, since the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, our world has changed, and your campaign has really ramped up. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how your work has shifted since October 7th.
Yeah, thank you. It has shifted. Oh, it's so bad. Meaning we have to still be sort of JewBelong, which is, the core of JewBelong, as I explained, is to have Jews who are disengaged, sort of re-engaged, and come back in and feel something good. And that is happening to some extent. There is this sort of rising of people who are like, okay, I'm going to do Hanukkah this year, but I never really did it before because I don't know, I just didn't, but I'm feeling very Jewish. So that's actually good. The thing is, they're feeling Jewish because there's anti-Semitism that's rising. So it's kind of, they're feeling Jewish for a kind of a really sad reason. But I think that what JewBelong is doing is being, this is real lot on social media where this is happening, is we're speaking both to the issue of the joyous Judaism, and we are also really talking. And if you follow us again on social media, you'll see that we're constantly posting about the war and about how, yeah, of course I want a ceasefire. I'm not an idiot, but I also want my hostages back. So there's just got to be, and just kids should be able to go to college and not have to worry about anti-Semitism, and all sorts of things is what we were posting about. We were supposed to have there was going to be an event I'm in New York right now, in New York, a big public event, and it was on a place called the High Line, which is like a park, and it was canceled because the High Line was just really worried about violence. And, there's things like that that have been happening. But I look at it like this: if all we do, side of my hand, if all we do are warriors all day and want to fight against anti-Semitism, and that is going to suck our soul. We are not going to be able to do that forever. We being any warriors out there, we just can't. I don't think people are made that way. You can't fight all the time. So on one side, we want to be warriors, we want to fight, we want to stand up and be proud Jews. And then on the other side, what are we fighting for? We are fighting because Judaism is a fabulous, fabulous religion that's lasted thousands of years, that is full of fabulous, great values, community and family and education. And really, we add so much to communities that we're part of. So it's that is what we're fighting for. So it's two sides of the same coin, and we need to be able to sort of do both, fill our cups with the joyous and be able to fight with the tougher part.
You talked a little bit earlier about how many states have JewBelong billboards. How do you decide where to put them up, and how many? What's that process like?
Sometimes there might be a donor who said, I really am having, in Atlanta, the anti-Semitism is horrible. And they had swastikas in all the middle schools. This was more than a year ago. And they said, you got to come to Atlanta. So they had a few donors, and they put together some funding, and we went to Atlanta. And that's one way. And then another way where we look at where there's been large experiences of anti-Semitism. And this is a little pre-October 7th, because at this point, it's almost hard to find places that haven't had bad anti-Semitism recently. But that was one way, is where we went that. And then the other part is, it's important that we're everywhere, not just go where the Jewish community is, because there are people who hate Jews and they've never met Jews. So we need to be talking to those communities too. So that is so we go by sort of lots of different, and then where there's availability. There's not always billboards, and they're not always available when I want them. So it's kind of a mix, and sometimes finances. That billboard that you saw at the very beginning of the sizzle reel, the one in Times Square, that was $60,000 for 20 seconds every minute and a half. Probably that's the most expensive billboard we've ever paid for. An average billboard might be $10,000 or even less, depending on, if it's on a highway and not digital and things. So that it all has to do with it. But we find it's just really interesting. And people ask us a lot of times, can you please come to my area? And we take that into consideration too. Students at a school might be UNC, there's some stuff going on down there. They want us to come down to North Carolina, things like that.
Archie, we have so many questions coming in from the audience, so I'm going to start choosing a few to ask to you. Sure. The first one came in quite early, but I think it's an important one. And this person asks, what do you think about the impact of the language we use, Jew hatred versus anti-Semitism? And does the average American know that anti-Semite means hatred or animosity towards Jews? And I'm curious because you often use the term Jew hatred. So can you talk a little bit about that decision?
There was, so when we first put up our billboard, it said anti-Semitism. That was the 75 years since the gas chamber. So now a billboard calling out anti-Semitism is not an overreaction. And I have a friend who she's a researcher. She's not just a friend. She's a scholar in sort of anti-Semitism and had been working in this field for years. And she said, nobody knows what anti-Semitism is. Use the word Jew hate. And I said, Jewish hate or Jew hate? And she's like, Jew hate. They've done a lot of research about that. And so, and I believe it was she'd been working with the Kraft Foundation when they had done the research. Now this is going back a couple of years. So we changed it back then. And by the way, people use Jewish hate and Jew hate. I see both all the time. And I also see anti-Semitism all the time. So the truth is, now that was a couple of years ago, and most people did not know what anti-Semitism is. So now it's happened because it's just so much more popular, more people do know what anti-Semitism is. And so we kind of do a mix in our work. And I'm very cognizant of what everyone else is doing. I think it's really important for people in this space to like share each other's, the creative work, and to sort of, we're all pedaling in the same direction. So let's help each other. So I've seen lots of groups that I really respect a lot use different ones, but the truth is not everyone does know what anti-Semitism is. So Jew hate or Jewish hate is also, they're all acceptable, or they're all equally unacceptable, but they, anti-Semitism, not everyone gets it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Archie. I think that helps, because I think it's the first time a lot of people have seen Jew hate written in such a way, whereas anti-Semitism has become something we're more familiar with, but Jew hate makes it very specific. So that it's an interesting term.
Yeah, it's tricky. I wish it was a shorter word. Remember, I'm doing billboards, and a good billboard only has like 9 words on it, and a long word really messes it up. So I was like, oh, but yeah, it's and then there's the question, like, do you use a dash between anti and Semitism? And anyway, you could talk about this for a long time. But again, I'm interested in the simplicity. Most Americans don't care. Like, most Americans, they don't even notice whether you use a dash after anti and Semitism. Anyway, but that's another issue.
So there's another question here that comes in that says, I loved your billboards until October 7th. And I find the current ones inflammatory. What is your goal with the current billboards? And then I think I would add to that, do you feel like if they're achieving the goal that you would like to achieve?
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting. They are the goal I'd like to achieve, to be really, or JewBelong would like to achieve. There's 7 people at JewBelong, we're small but mighty, is to raise awareness about anti-Semitism. So, I mean, this is a Holocaust, organization that I'm speaking in. Part of the issue, and we get a lot of feedback that's like, just speaking out about it is important. I mean, there are people who want to be quiet. They're like, shh, don't talk about it. Like, don't talk about anti-Semitism because, it's just like, it's negative, and it's not a lot, by the way, but we have heard that. And I think that's just the wrong way to go. I think if people are aware that this is unacceptable, it's outrageous that people are scared to be Jewish. It's outrageous that it should be, I think we should all be screaming it from the rooftops all the time, and we should be asking our allies to scream it from the rooftops too. Like, that is like, how dare when you think about it, like, the kids are like covering their yarmulkes with baseball hats. People are like putting their Stars of David inside their t-shirts because they can't be Jewish. I mean, it is so unbelievable that is happening in our country right now, and most people are not helping out. And then instead of not helping out, they're having, protests that turn, for Palestine, Hamas, and they turn into anti-Semitism. So I would quadruple our work if I could. And it is making people aware of it. And as I also said earlier, I think that the world needs, when real change has to happen, people have to be aware of it. And if they are not aware of it, they're not going to help. And that is how change has occurred in this country for years and years. That's like, when you think of any social change, whether, again, with gay marriage or Black Lives Matter or Asian hate, or I don't even, gun control, whatever it is, people have to be aware of it. And they are not aware that anti-Semitism is as horrible as it is. And we need to make them aware.
Archie, there's another question that asks, how do you address what's going on now on college campuses? Is that something that you or JewBelong is addressing?
We bring our truck. To JewBelong, we collaborate with other organizations. So we might be communicating with a Chabad or a Hillel before bringing the truck to campus. So sometimes they'll have a program if they know that the truck is coming, or they'll just they'll invite us to a Shabbat dinner, or, the truck driver to a Shabbat dinner, and they'll mostly there to like take pictures. So what happens is kids, they come out, they take pictures, they say, oh my gosh, how long is the truck going to be here? I want to get my friend, she's in class right now, or what have you. So that is really, that is how the truck is dealt with, and sometimes billboards too on college campuses. Also, the other is a lot of sharing of social media. We have a lot of students who follow us on Instagram, and I know that because they always were like, the anti-Semitism is really bad here at, fill in the blank, whichever school you want. And then they often ask for the truck to come there. So that's what we're doing on college campuses. We're not lecturers. That's other people are. And we have conversations with people all the time. They can go to our website and they can learn about, they can read great articles and things like that. But we are really about raising awareness. And I guess I'm going to also answer it like this. Sometimes the Jewish community thinks that everybody wants to know a lot about our issue. And, they're like, oh my gosh, you should read Noah Tishby's book, or you should read Bret Stephens, or go read an article from Barry Weiss, or read this book or that book. And I'm like, you don't understand. They don't care that much. Like, they care 3 seconds maximum about this issue. And I think that that's okay that not everybody wants to read a book or a very long article. That's the way our country is. So let's deal with reality. And the reality is that there needs to be short form billboards also talking about it, in addition to people writing fabulous articles and books about the issue.
Archie, I'm wondering, you're really on the front lines of what's going on right now in the world, and confronting anti-Semitism and being faced with it on a daily basis. And I wonder, how do you deal with that day in and day out?
Besides being really crabby, yeah, I truly believe that last slide that I showed, I can't tell my children that I stayed silent, whatever it said. Now I'm even forgetting it. Hold on, I literally have it. I need to be able to tell my children that I did not stay silent. Like, I really believe that. Like, I remember when I was a kid, and I do not mean this at all. I just want to, before I say this, I don't blame, this is not blaming the Holocaust on anything. This is just like, I don't know what it was like back in Poland and back in Germany and to be a Jew in the 1930s. I have no idea. But I remember asking my mom and dad when I was a kid, I was like, well, what'd you guys do? Like, what was going on here? Because they were in America. And I was like, I watched that movie Shoah that, like, in 3 parts, they showed it to us in religious school. And, I could never just, like, I don't understand. Like, they were taking people on train, like putting them on trains and like taking them away. Like, what the hell was going on? And I don't know what was going on. I wasn't there, but I do know I am here now. And I see that this is a terrible, none of us have ever seen it this bad in America, to be Jewish and the fear of being Jewish. And I'm a marketer. I know how to do one thing. And if one thing I can do is putting billboards up and having people have really, really sometimes difficult discussions and add, then that is what I'm going to do. So I guess I get a little bit of feel purposeful about it. I also do feel incredibly sad and worried, and really, really worried about the next couple of years. This isn't going to be over soon. Even when the war is over, I really do worry about what it's going to feel like for kids in school for the next few years. And I think that people want to be with people who are a winning team and feeling like positive. And I think the more people who, even if you don't feel brave, act brave and, be a proud Jew, that has been very, very attractive to the non-Jewish community. That I found a lot. It's like, I may be scared inside, but, say, nope, I'm a proud Jew. I'm going to fight for this. I am allowed to be whatever religion I want to be. And that is very attractive. I think people should remember that, and most people don't hate, by far, most people don't hate Jews. They might not bring it up. If you bring it up, they're willing to talk about it.
I think, Archie, too, one of the things that you've shown us that you've just mentioned is you identified an issue, a problem in the world, anti-Semitism, or as you were saying with your husband, this kind of intimidating or uninviting aspect of Judaism, and you looked at your own skills and talents and gifts and said, what can I do about this issue? What tools do I have available to me to make some movement in the world versus just sitting here and throwing up my hands and saying, I don't know, I guess nothing. I mean, you said, here's what I can do. I'm a marketer. I have a gift at this, and I'm going to do this. And I think in a lot of ways that is like an incredible message to all of us, that we can look at what gifts do we have, or what are our talents and skills, and how can we make a little bit of positive change in the world for something that we believe in, using those skills and whatever they are. And I think you've done an amazing job at, really pushing that forward. And, of all the things, here we are discussing it. And yes, whether people agree with it or disagree with it, or whether it's, whatever impact it's having, we're all talking about it. And that is much more than we were doing before. So I think that is,
that's true. That's part of the issue, is let's talking about, like, it's anti-Semitism it's a difficult thing to be talking about. But if we don't talk about it, I don't want to be around. I mean, silence doesn't work. It just doesn't work. We know that silence doesn't work. It is on I don't remember the quote, but it was said, like, silence helps the bad people. So speaking about it is really important. I do want to add one thing, is that I used to be nervous about having conversations about anti-Semitism because it always turns to Israel, and I am not a Middle East expert. I know enough to base the conversation. So I said and I really learned to say things like this. So people said, oh, I want to talk about, anti-Semitism, and what about Israel, and what about Gaza, and what about, and I was like, okay, listen, do you agree that Israel has a right to exist? And depending on the answer, then I say, okay, me too. I agree, Israel has a right to exist. You want to talk about, I can talk a little bit about government. My kids, I don't vote there. My kids don't go to the army. I am not an Israel expert, but it has a right to exist. And I want peace for Israelis, and I want peace for the Palestinians. Let's talk about that. But when people want to, like, when they really don't think that it has a right to exist, I don't even engage in that conversation. And then I do know enough when people are like, well, what about this settlement and that settlement? And like, they barely know what they're talking about on the other side. Like, I was like, you don't have to be an Israel expert to keep saying, yes, Israel needs a right to exist, and we need to make peace with the Palestinians. How are we going to make that happen? And you don't have to, like, that. I used to just be thinking, like, oh my gosh, they know about this. They hardly, anti-Semites hardly know anything about it. They just say, from the river to the sea. And then it's like, you realize that means the end of Israel. And they're like, oh no, I didn't even realize that. Like, it's very frustrating. But engage in the conversations. And if someone's doesn't agree with Israel's right to exist, then I usually just don't even have the conversation. But I also say is, I'm very worried about anti-Semitism in America, and that has nothing to do with Israel.
Yeah.
But you're the one linking them. I'm not. And that happens that happens a lot too. Sorry, yes. I know I just threw a lot out there, but it's really important for people to feel there's not anyone who's on this call who couldn't have that conversation about, an end of the Jewish state, and also how people are fearful here in America just because they're Jewish.
Yes. And in a way, they're almost two separate conversations, and how one often leads into the other. And that there's usually a common denominator if people would sit down and take the time and have the courage to actually have the conversation, even if it's hard, like, to have the conversation. I think we can agree that, we all want peace for the Israelis, for the Jews, for the Palestinians. This is terrible what's going on. I can't imagine that anybody likes what is happening right now. This is a disaster. So it's like, how can we make this a situation where people can live healthy, full, productive lives on all sides?
Exactly. The only ones happy right now is Hamas. I think they're really happy with what's going on. I think everyone else is miserable.
That might be true. Well, Archie, this brings us to the end of our time, and I'm thank you so much for taking the time to come and meet with us today and to tell us more about JewBelong.
Thank you so much for having me. Please go on our website. If it's inspiring, support us. If not, just go and read some of the stuff that we put up. and and follow us on social media if you can. I think if nothing else, it'll give you something to talk about.
It'll give you something to talk about. Thank you, Archie, and to everyone who's watching today. This wraps up our Lunch and Learn programming for 2023. We have some wonderful speakers and topics lined up for 2024 that will bring new ideas and new approaches to the forefront. And as always, we hope it will keep you thinking and give you something for your next dinner conversation. For example, let me tell you about our next upcoming Lunch and Learn program in January. Many of you who are listening to this call know that the Roma were one of the groups that were targeted by the Nazis for genocide, and at least 250,000 were murdered during the Holocaust. After the war, discrimination against the Roma continued, and their suffering and their history was largely ignored. Author and historian Ari Joskowitz is going to come and speak about the post-war relationship between Roma and Jews and the efforts of the Roma to turn to Jewish institutions for recognition. Our programs at the Holocaust Center are possible because of all of our generous supporters. Donations of all sizes make a difference, so please consider the Holocaust Center in your year-end giving. We couldn't do this work without you. And I want to thank our entire staff who are working so hard to carry on our many programs and carry out the work and mission of the Holocaust Center, especially Richard Green, our technology director, who's helping to run this Lunch and Learn program today, and the many others we've done. Dee Simon, our CEO, who leads our organization with expertise, and our entire team, Paul Regelbrug, Jessica Michaels, Brenda Anderson, Lori Werschel-Cohen, Morgan Romero, Lexi Jason, Amanda Davis, Katie Lawrence, Michael Langberg, Olivia Teague, and Mario Felipe Bamonte. As you can see, it takes a whole team to run all that we do. I wish you all safety and security and happy holidays in the weeks to come. Thank you again for joining today's program. This concludes our program for today.